Welcome back to Noir Alley. I'm Eddie Muller, your tour guide through the sordid cinematic underworld of film noir. Today we leave the black and white chiaroscuro of the 1940s behind for a full-color pop art crime film from the early 1960s. It's The Killers from Universal, directed and produced by Don Siegel and starring Lee Marvin and Clu Gulager as the title characters. It's a remake of the 1946 movie of the same name, which was a high watermark in Hollywood's original noir movement. Both movies originated in a short story by Ernest Hemingway, who got his name above the title on each, even though he provided only the premise. A pair of assassins track down their target, and instead of running when cornered, he accepts his fate stoically. That's pretty much all there was to Hemingway's 7-page original. Don Siegel was working as a film editor at Warner's in the 1940s, specializing in montage sequences, but he was champing at the bit to direct his own films. He wrote a treatment based on Hemingway's short story in the hope that Jack Warner would greenlight it as his directorial debut. Instead, Warner sold the rights to the story to producer Mark Hellinger, who wanted to make it at Universal with Siegel directing. Warner nixed that idea, and Hellinger hired Robert Siodmak instead, which resulted in the big hit that introduced Burt Lancaster to American movie audiences and gave Ava Gardner her breakthrough role. Hellinger's 1946 feature is often called the Citizen Kane of film noir for its intricate flashback structure, artful direction, and the mystery surrounding a man's last moments. 18 years would pass before Don Siegel finally got a chance to make his version. NBC bought the property with the intention of making it as a TV movie. At that time, Lee Marvin and Angie Dickinson weren't yet the huge stars they'd become later in the decade. The script was by Gene L. Kuhn, who'd written a few screenplays, but mostly worked in television, writing on everything from Have Gun Will Travel to McHale's Navy. 3 years later, Kuhn would be one of the lead writers on the original Star Trek, as well as being the showrunner for that landmark program. Kuhn's script differs from the original in one significant way. There is no insurance investigator, the character played by Edmund O'Brien in the earlier version. Here, it's the killers themselves, especially Charlie, played by Lee Marvin, who want to know why their victim invites his death. The change balances the noir scales, so to speak. Siegel's film has none of the visual style associated with noir, but it's an even darker vision. The killers, supporting players in the original, are the protagonists of this film, a sure sign that the times were changing. And there isn't nearly the same narrative complexity, as the dozen or so flashbacks that drove the first version are pared to only a few, featuring John Cassavetes as Johnny North, the race car driver who replaces the lovelorn boxer played by Lancaster in the original. Also making the film historically significant, it's the last movie made by the future President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, who 3 years later would be elected governor of California. He goes out with a bang, playing the cold-hearted villain of the piece. Once Don Siegel turned in his final cut, NBC deemed the film too violent for primetime television, so Universal released it theatrically in the summer of 1964, 6 months after the murder of President Kennedy. The nation's grief didn't help the box office any, but over time this version of The Killers has found a devoted following, especially among fans of Siegel's streamlined, hard-edged style. Be sure to stick around after the film for a special treat. I'll be talking with one of the stars, Clu Gulager, whose portrayal of Lee Marvin's cool but twitchy sidekick is one of the movie's most memorable aspects. Co-starring Angie Dickinson and Claude Akins, here is the film that many people consider the first example of neo-noir from 1964, The Killers.